Hey guys, how are you guys doing? So today we're going to be talking about how to write awesome action scenes. So first thing we have to establish is who is your audience. You can figure all that out because that's going to completely change the way that your content is. There are certain, so say you're writing science fiction or you're writing fantasy or you're writing dystopian, apocalyptic, all kinds of stuff, right? Each of those is going to have slightly different styles of writing action scenes. But I think there are certain ideals that translate very well across all writing in terms of action. Now, we have to understand that predominantly most readers, if you look at the body of readers in the developed world, it's probably going to be women, right? There are a lot of male readers, but predominantly it's female. So we have to understand that when we are writing things, especially if you're a man, for me, I love action scenes in movies, right? I'm a man. So I enjoy that. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But at the same time, I understand that the action means nothing without story. I would say that the idea of female readers is that they are more interested in the character development, in the emotional connection between the characters and for the plot. While the idea is that most men are only in it for the violence, or predominantly. Again, we're working on huge stereotypes. But I disagree with that. I think that there are quite a few female readers that do enjoy action sequences in their content. Unless they're reading like romance, for example, that's probably not really there. There's still action, but it's not guns or violence, right? Predominantly. But that's not for that genre. So that's where it comes back to what kind of genre are you writing in, and that kind of determines what your action is. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're writing something that is fantasy or science fiction. Even if it's modern, there's going to be guns in it at some point, right? Or swords or something. So there's going to be some sort of physical, violent action sequences. For me, I try to write very intense, violent encounters. Now, that doesn't mean blood and guts and gore, but it does mean there's a lot of intensity and then it's over. Well, why? In my mind, when you watch certain movies or you do research for mainly real world examples, most gunfights don't last that long. You'd be very surprised that they're not like some movies where they're just dragged out for freaking ever. They're actually really violent and then it's over. A lot of times people don't want to get shot. So people will avoid conflict sometimes because they don't want to get physical harm. Who would think that, right? When you watch movies, it seems like these stupid thugs in these gangs will just run right in, completely violent, completely disregarding their own life. And you're like, well, realistically, once one of them gets shot, they probably are going to run. And it's not because maybe they're fearful, it's just self-preservation kicks in. So when I write, I have my wife read everything that I write. She volunteers. I'm not making her. And I have learned through different other female readers that I've had in feedback that they don't like, now this is again operating in a bit of a stereotypes, but they do not like the blow for blow, drawn out, he did this, then this, then this, then he did that, and he did this, and he did that, and he did this, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on for dozens of pages for one fight scene. They want something that is there. They like the action, the violence. When I say like, I don't mean like they're supporting it as much as just it's there and it's interesting. It's obviously there to move the story along, but they don't want it to sit there forever. I feel that still works for male readers as well, because I'll get plenty of male readers that will give me feedback and say, I really enjoyed the action, the characters are really awesome, the dialogue is on point. So, I mean, I'm still hitting the notes of interesting. My goal is to try to interest both. If I have to pick, obviously I'm more writing the content towards male readers, but I'm absolutely trying to develop my characters and my plot in such a way that the female readers are still enjoying it. Because my mind is I want Revelations to one day become visual content. So whether that's movies or like a Netflix series or something like that, I want it to be able to translate to video. So I have to already be thinking ahead of like, okay, well, I don't want it to be completely focused on just the male audience because look at Marvel, for example, right? Marvel has been a tremendous, the MCU has been a tremendous success. And there are plenty of female viewers. There's plenty of them. Well, why? Because Marvel does their action in such a way, in my mind, that it is sometimes, depending on which movie you're watching, really intense and really pulls you in. It's very exciting, but it doesn't just go on and on and on and on, right? Like a Saving Private Ryan movie is meant to be very, very action heavy. But a lot of the Marvel movies are more about the characters being heroic. So sometimes that is through action, and other times that's from making good decisions or the dilemma of their decisions. So what I look to do is I look to make my action, like I said before, very intense and very to the point. Now, that doesn't mean that some action sequences aren't a little bit more drawn out, because they just need to be. But for example, I did a scene in one of my short stories where I had my mechs that you can see behind me. It was a short story that had some of the mechs. And there was this big conflict, and the main character of that short story was a pilot. There's infantry and tanks and stuff. But my wife didn't really care for, now this was also when I first started writing, but she didn't care for the way that I wrote it, because it just wasn't as exciting to her, because it was so action heavy in that short story, versus a different short story that I had written just before that she really loved, and it had plenty of action, lots of fighting in it, but it had more character development. It had more dialogue. So, and from different feedback I've gotten from other female readers, I think the males need it too, they just maybe don't realize it, that you need to have dialogue. There needs to be the tension that you've built in the dialogue makes the action sequences that much stronger. If people know that there really is this rivalry between maybe your antagonist and your protagonist, and they're really fighting, it builds intensity, and you get really sucked into the action, because you're like, okay, this is the moment that they've been both building to, and now here they are. Or one character needs to escape, and you know that because maybe in the sequence there's a bomb, or they're trying to save somebody, or they just have to get away to survive because they're injured. It builds intensity in those not action moments. So in my mind, the way to be able to build action is the in-between. That is what makes your action sequences very intense. The other thing is being careful not to drag it out. Make it hyper aggressive. Now, that doesn't mean that like every single shot from your main character is a headshot, but make it seem intense. That can be through colorful language. The other thing is make your characters not seem invincible. The way I compare that is like if you've ever played Halo, Master Chief is like one of the most heroic characters that's ever made, as far as he's in full body armor. He has a force field, energy shield that protects him. He's highly skilled. He's taller than the average human. He has enhanced strength, enhanced speed. He's an amazing accurate shot. So I use Master Chief as like, and you could find different characters as well, but Master Chief is like the embodiment of almost the most invincible character. In the sense of like if you took Master Chief and you just ran him against some mafia guys, like the people that John Wick fights, and you had John Wick was wearing Master Chief's armor, right? John Wick wouldn't have any challenge in just wasting all of those guys because they couldn't hurt him. What makes sometimes the action seem more intense is that the main hero can be hurt. So you need to have components built in there so that your antagonists or your villains have a way to hurt the hero. Either, in this case, if maybe he lost his armor, or maybe they have different weapons that can still hurt him through his armor, or they beat him up before he got in the armor. So he's in the armor and he's really strong, but he's also injured, so he's not working at full capacity. If you have your characters just literally laying waste to everything they run into, unless that's for a particular reason, it's going to make for dull action, because you're like, okay, whatever, yeah, he shot that guy. Okay, oh, he blew that guy's car up. Whatever. He's invincible. Nobody can hurt him, right? That's one downside to like a character like Superman, because Superman can only be so interesting, right? Because for the common person, the common villain can't hurt him. They can't hurt him. The only way to hurt him is through like emotional pain. I'm going to go for the people he loves or the thing that he holds important, and I'll hurt him or threaten him through those means. Because if I went up toe to toe against him and I try to fight Superman, I'm going to get wrecked, right? So when you have characters that are super invincible or can just beat every single situation with ease, it creates lack of intensity for the reader also. So the character has to be able to be vulnerable at times, has to be able to be real, credible danger. They have to actually, most readers don't want the main characters to die, but they don't want them to be invincible. So as the author, you have to walk this weird limbo of, could the main character die in this scene? Like, could their life really be in real danger? And I think that most readers want to feel like there was genuine danger of that character dying. Now, I've seen it sometimes in movies or different books where you're like, I know this character's not going to die. You're literally just messing with me. Like one big example I can think of was the Han Solo trailer, right? And they had, the trailer had the big long train on the snow world, and you had Han and Chewie, and Chewbacca's got like his head sticking out of the train because they were doing their heist. And there's this thing that's coming, and they're like, oh, Chewie's going to die. He's going to get his head whacked right off. Oh my gosh. And he narrowly escapes it. And as the viewer, you're like, there was literally no danger there because Chewie is in all the other movies. So I know there's no danger. In the movie, it made sense because it's just adding a little bit of intensity. But putting that in the trailer completely just numbs the viewer potentially because they're like, there was no real danger there. I know there's no danger. So it's not even a cool shot to put in promotional stuff because there's no danger. That sort of concept can go into with the story also. If they know that the character, if they don't feel that danger, it's not as exciting. So you can have a really short, violent, intense action scene, but if the character never feels really in danger, then sometimes it's just lost some of its energy because it's just not there. Because everyone's like, every challenge this character runs into, he just wrecks. Now, sometimes that can be done really well also, where you know that the first few encounters, it's kind of just the author showing off the skills of the main character. Because sometimes maybe they're just really highly trained and they're just very deadly. But, you know, if it keeps going on too long without a real suitable challenge, it's going to seem kind of boring because it's just, there's no danger. Now, one thing real quick as we wrap this up, you do need to be careful that you don't break your own rules. If you have one character who just wrecks all these people, maybe hundreds of bad guys, right? He's just wrecking all of them. And then all of a sudden he gets to one guy and it's like a really stupid thing that happens and now he's like super mortally injured and you're like, what? That wouldn't have happened. We just watched him just destroy all these people and then he got beat or he got super hurt from that thing or that person. Like that feels forced. So there needs to be real danger for your readers to be interested, but you can't also make silly things happen in order to move the story along because then your reader is going to be kind of pulling out of the universe because they're kind of using their more logical side of their brain rather than suspending and just being in disbelief. They're just pulled out because they're like, that's just stupid because he wouldn't have made that decision. I just saw him just beat up all these guys and this guy shows up and kicks him in the face once and he's just like, oh, my face is broken and that's it. And he loses. That just seems out of character. So you got to kind of make your rules, make the character, establish the character, and never break that and make them seem like super vulnerable, like to the point where it's like, that's just stupid. It needs to kind of stick together. So I hope this video helps a bit. Action sequences is something that takes a lot of experience, and you'll get better as you keep doing them, and they'll get more intense. It's just part of practice of writing. So if you guys have any other comments or questions, please leave those down below. I thank you guys very much for watching, and hopefully this video helped you guys out with your writing. All right, talk to you guys later.